fine, Stan.
The love of the game and a bizarre calling that even death couldn't stop. That's what some people say brings a legendary Quad City gambler back from the grave, perhaps playing poker in your living room.
Pearl Buttons was an old-fashioned Rivertown gambler, and the Rivertown in question was Rock Island.
Bruce Carlson knows the history of Pearl Buttons. As a ghostwriter, he's brought Pearl's fatal story to life.
What'll it be there, rich boy?
I need 2 cars, please.
Pearl Buttons, like the other gamblers, preferred to play in hotels, and often played in a hotel in downtown Rock Island. Whereas playing a poker game with a bunch of guys in somebody's barn and winning, and then having to go out and find your horse and stumble back to town was often a trip that never got completed because they'd find themselves murdered.
And that's what would happen to Pearl Buttons.
Play your cards, unless you're afraid to.
He ain't afraid.
The one time he played in an out-of-the-way poker game was the one time he wouldn't walk away.
That particular night, he did well. He won, and he won big.
I'd like to see what you have. We're waiting.
How about a flush?
He won with a full house in the last hand that he played. It was...
Queens over 4s. I'm afraid I got you beat, friend.
It was Pearl's best and last hand of the night.
You big city cheat!
But it wasn't his last hand ever. Late one night, over 60 years later, 3 men were playing cards in a barn in Rock Island.
These guys were playing poker, and in drops a stranger.
Can I help you?
Good evening, gentlemen. I just wondered if I might join your game.
Have a seat.
They call me Pearl Buttons.
Joe. Bob.
Billy. Nice to meet you, fellas.
It seems that everything was going pretty well normal until a pot was won by this stranger, one with a full house.
See what you have, my friend.
Straight, ace high.
It's a mighty fine hand, but I'm afraid I have queens over 4s.
That was enough for Pearl Buttons. He sat up, tipped his hat,
Evening, gentlemen.
and vanished, leaving his winnings behind.
This was alleged to have happened several times over the course of the years following Pearl's death, where a stranger would drop into a card game and want to play and would be allowed to play and be playing for a while and take a pot with queens over 4s.
Does the ghost of Pearl Buttons wander along the Mississippi River, stopping only to play a game of cards? Is the lure of one more hand so overwhelming that even the afterlife can't hold him back? If so, why does Pearl Buttons quit with queens over 4s, leave his winnings behind?
Apparently he was afraid to take the pot for fear of what happened to his mortal self.
And some night, when you're playing a friendly game of poker, a stranger walks in. You might find yourself beaten fair and square by a man named Pearl Buttons.